Hello and welcome to the Financial Bunny TV. My name is Nicolette Mashile, also known as the Financial Bunny. What an absolute pleasure it is today to talk a little bit about the engine behind South Africa's economy, and that is SMEs. And I'm not going to allow anybody to say otherwise, because I truly believe that some of the biggest economies in the world really understand the SME landscape, and they actually support and fund it. And that's why today's conversation is absolutely close to my heart, because many of you guys know I am too an SME. And we are joined by Thabo Hleza. Now, this gentleman, his actual name is Thabang, so we'll get into a little bit of why Thabo became Thabang or Thabang became Thabo. But he heads up investment at Old Mutual's Masisizane Fund. And it's such a tongue twister to say the fund name, but if you actually just take a beat and ask yourself, what does it mean? Masisizane, let us help each other. Now, in his role, he's the executive for deal origination, stakeholder management, marketing and communications. He's basically the gentleman that makes sure that this fund is visible, it is doing what it does, and it speaks to the people that it is intended for. Thabo, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Nicolette. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I'm excited. I'm like, give out the jumper, because, you know, we never have people that are behind funding come and have conversations with us, right? Yeah. It's almost the workshop, or there's a masterclass, there's a this, but when you are this close, it makes the conversation a little bit more real and tangible, right? Before we jump into the conversation, Thabang to Thabo, ibereka.
It's a long story. So I was given the name Thabang growing up, and that's really what my mother calls me. At some point, I decided to play a bit of football, and I went to, that's how Thabo came about.
Yes.
My mother always makes the story when he gets home and looks at the wall. Yeah, my boy, you've done well, but nothing there reflects your name.
Yes,
you know? So that's how Thabo ended up, but I'm happy to roll with either.
With either one. It still speaks to you.
Exactly.
Tell me about your passion for SMEs. Why this space? I mean, if I look at a little bit of your background in terms of career movements, you've almost always been in a space that speaks to SME and SME development, understanding SMEs. What is the passion? Where does the fire come from?
I guess to your earlier point that these are the people that really drives this economy, right? But given where we play from an impact side of things, then it says someone was willing to give a hand and support, at least me, right? And then the same is true for us as an impact fund. How do you make sure that we lend a hand and support SMEs grow and thrive so that truly they can be the engine that drive this economy?
But let's talk about the history of entrepreneurship in South Africa. Maybe let's perhaps start there. You know, in more sophisticated, as they use that word, you know, for the global north, where they talk about their economies and their markets, they often say entrepreneurship is born from solving problems and solutionizing or solutioneering, whatever the English word is there. What is the foundation of entrepreneurship here in our country?
I guess one would say it's the same, right? Because every business that we are dealing with today started as an idea at some point. And that idea is born of seeing a problem, and then there's an opportunity that is born out of it, then there's a business. You could look at any business that you are interacting with, but then it's a question, how do you support that business either from a funding, capacity building, that then it grows and scale into then these large businesses that we suddenly deal with today. But at some point, they started as a one-two-man businesses that looked at the challenge that we're facing, whether in the rural areas, in the peri-urban areas, then says, what is the solve to this challenge? And that's really how entrepreneurship is born.
And as you were speaking about it and explaining, you know, the birthing of this idea of entrepreneurship in South Africa, I'm just thinking of the birthing of a child and the nurturing that needs to take place, the development stages that need to take place. Take me through what type of support. Let's talk SMEs in general. Let's not segment them to say this is, for instance, a startup. Yes. What type of support and nurturing do these SMEs need?
So I often say there are really two challenges that SMEs are facing, right? And I'm summarizing here. But one is there's a number of SMEs that don't get funding, right? Which
Yes.
then you often say that we've got an access to funding challenge. And I'll say this, that this is one ecosystem that is not void of money.
Yes.
I think there's enough money floating around in the ecosystem, right? Despite the 2 to 10 approval rates, right? And you've got that, and the greater part of why they're not funded largely is because there's some funding readiness issues, which we'll speak to,
Yes.
right? And you've got those then 2 of the 10 that get the funding. But you have often hear the stats that SMEs survive between 2 to 3 years of operation, then not longer than that, which then says the solution to that is not funding, right? Because they've gotten funding. So why then don't they survive beyond the 5 years? Which there's something more, and that something more is the capacity building, right? Which says, how do you provide mentorship, support, coaching, training, but very tailored and customized training, right? So that you also deal with this issue that SMEs often say, we're overtrained, over-workshop, and right? And that happens because you put everyone in one box and just deal and just pray, right? But if you say, these are the issues that you are dealing with, here's the tailored mentorship and coaching that your business require, here's the peer-to-peer training and workshop that this business require, leadership development at an entrepreneur level. And that's what this ecosystem requires, right? And that then what we'll see, you've addressed the funding readiness. On the other side, you've addressed the capacity building. Funding is just the glue that connects, right? And then all of a sudden, you're going to see a significant change in this failure rate of or success rate of SMEs.
I like something you spoke about, and I think it's that entrepreneurial leadership training. Because often or not, we hear entrepreneurs in South Africa say, we are overtrained. You guys have incubated us, we are coming from incubators, then a master class on this, then there's a workshop on this. How much more training do we need? And I think there was also something that you alluded to about tailored and specific type of training. So it's not just clumping one group of people because they all fall under the segmentation of SMEs.
Exactly.
So Renovakensa, all of it under it, right? So I want to park that for a little bit because I think I want to bring the whole story together. So with all of this, and from you moving from, I think you were at IDF Capital, right? Before you came here, right? So as you move and they tell you about this post or you hear about this post, you are interviewing, when you are researching Masisizane, to you, what was the core mandate of the fund?
So the core mandate of the fund, and we've been doing this for the last 18 years, right? Founded in 2007, and at the heart of it is really says, how do we give back into the communities that you are operating in? And we chose to do that by investing in majority Black-owned businesses. And we're also very deliberate that we want to prioritize businesses that are operating in the rural areas led by youth and women. And we'll say why those 3 segmentation, largely because rural areas are underdeveloped from an infrastructure point of view. Youth and women typically lacks the equity contribution and the security, and all of these factors then renders them risky from a traditional lending point of view. And as a player that wants to come in and address market failures, so it was a no-brainer, right? And that's why we look at this at this market. But to your point, what does success look like then for us? Masisizane is saying a business that has been with Masisizane either for a 5 or a 3 year period. Post that period, we like to see this business getting funded from a traditional lender that originally wouldn't fund this business. That's what success looks like. Over and above the impact and the commercial returns, whether it's job creation, inclusions of this segment into the finance mainstream, that's what really makes me happy. And that's what attracted me into this role when I saw it.
So you started in 2007.
Exactly.
Just a year before crisis hits the financial services sector.
Exactly.
That is quite scary for any business, you know, coming in as a new entrant. I mean, obviously you guys are an impact fund, but I think you operate within the same, you know, expectations from being a business. So let's talk about, you say, since for the last 18 years, as you had started, this is what Masisizane has been doing.
Yeah.
How then do you differentiate yourself within market? Because if and to your point, you said funding is there.
Yeah.
It's not that there's no funding. Funding is there.
Yeah.
So what differentiates you guys? What makes you guys stand out other than who you're targeted or, you know, entrepreneurs that you are intending for? What else makes you stand out?
Yeah. So I always make the point that we walk the journey with the client, right? Because it's not lost to us that the client that we are dealing with, funding is not the only span and the toolkit that will make that business succeed. So from early DD stage, we really identify what are the issues, both with the business and with the entrepreneur. And we all often say we want to deal with an entrepreneur that has a teachable spirit, right? Because you are receptive to the issues that then together we are highlighting that your business needs this and this and this. Whether it's access to market, to an extent that we've got access to those markets, we'll facilitate those networks. Yourself, you need coaching and training in this area. That's how do we deal with that? Typically, business is started by me, but as it grows, then it's important then to say, who am I bringing on into this bus, right? So from a human capital strategy, that's what then we also support the business with. So it's really over and above the funding, which for us is really an entry to the game, but it's the support, the capacity building that we really provide and walk the journey with our clients. That's what differentiates us.
I like that. And I think what, you know, when you look at the segmentation of who you guys are intending for or who you guys have kind of shaped the fund around, these are individuals when they start their businesses, and I think you've mentioned that. Now, it's important for us to almost have both business funding and personal funding walk next to each other, right? Yeah. Because often entrepreneurs think that it's my business and then it's me. Right.
Exactly.
What characteristics are we looking for? If we say Masisizane is interested in an entrepreneur, what type of individual is that person?
Suppose, in fact, I like the point you're making around the business and the person, right? Which I think will touch on just how this muddies the waters in managing your personal finance as well as the business. But back to your point, the client that you look at is a client that typically describe it a client at the early growth stage, right? With consistent growth in revenues, with a growing customer base, right? And say from a criteria, this is a client that has been operating at least for a minimum of 6 months, with $1 million annual revenues. We are a sector agnostic fund, with the exception then of mining, property and other scene related, right? But we also prioritize sectors that high development impact, sectors with a high concentration of small businesses, sectors then that are pro to driving employment and growth. So those are the sectors that we prioritize, which then says manufacturing is one of those, logistics and transport is one of those, agribusiness is one of those sectors that we look at, right? But also, to my earlier point, a client that is open to receiving support, coaching and training along the journey. Really a client with a teachable spirit. You run your business, but be open that there are certain things that I may be good at. Some of our business owners, great engineers, but poor in financial management. So be willing to receive support and teaching on the financial management side.
However, you use the big English word, sector agnostic. And I was like, yo, Thabo, I'm going to need you to go a little bit deeper. So thank you very much for kind of outlining some of those industries. Because sometimes, you know, when a fund says we are industry agnostic, sometimes you think, but maybe what I'm doing, because you yourself as an entrepreneur has not even defined what industry you are in. You are often very nervous about having these conversations. I mean, I always think as financial bunny, like, do we fall in IT? Do we fall in comms? Do we fall in education? You know, it's always confusing for us. So I like that you've kind of specified. Maybe with that specification, and for those who are listening and watching right now, why not property? Why not mining?
Yeah, so one is the capital intensive that is required, right? And you'll see of all the sectors that we typically don't fund is largely because of that. It's a fund that has a limited pot of funds, right? And you really want to make as much impact as possible. So if say it's go into mining, one mining deal will pretty much wipe out my entire fund, right? So, and that's really the one part to it. But it's also saying to have the necessary capability to respond to those sectors, which is really important for us, right? And then we said, these are the sectors where we believe against these criteria, we can make a significant impact. And we've been doing that again for the last couple of years.
Yeah. And you specifically spoke about R1 million, and I think maybe you need to just reiterate that point of, I think your business must have been in operation for 6 months and must have a revenue of at least R1 million.
R1 million rand annually.
Annually.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you help me shape the business? Because I think that's a lot of people, some people stumble into businesses, you know. We stumble into situations where we are solving, and at the point that you were at, the solve was necessary.
Exactly.
But the scaling portion of it becomes a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
And you said you need to have a teachable spirit. So do you then bring in a level of a team that helps me shape that? Or are you saying part of funding me is partly asking for equity?
So we are predominantly a debt fund.
Okay.
So 99.9% of our portfolio is debt. So to your point around, do we provide then support? So in addition to our post-investment offering, 2 years ago, we launched what we called a value-add service provider panel, right? And really that is a panel of experts that respond to the support that the SMEs requires across the sectors that we play in. So there are those that provide the actual technical support in manufacturing, there are those that provide mentorship in whatever area, there are those that assist with financial management from an accounting point of view, there are those that assist whether with valuations, so across the spectrum, right? But it also says, to your point again, that how do you assist this business grow from one stage to another, right? You were selling cups, you were pricing them 50 rand because that's really, you were starting and you wanted to get it out there. But this business has grown, your cup now is very sophisticated, you cannot continue to price it as such. So part of the support then, how do we bring on board pricing strategies that help this business package the solution better for the next level of growth?
I like that. And I'm just thinking that there may be some critique to your fund, right? And just listening to some of those businesses you were speaking about and the sectors and the industries of them, they are quite difficult to get success and break into. So a lot of people often shy away from them. And then there is a huge mass of people in this, you know, more salesy business, service types of businesses. How then do you respond to that critique to say, but you know, you are helping people that already were going to be successful anyway? Yes.
I guess it speaks to the point that says, for that business to be successful, I think from the bat, you ought to be clear what is the uniqueness in your offering, right? Which makes it easier to attract funding, to get customers and so forth. If you are not able to clearly distinguish that this is the uniqueness in my offering, and that is one of the challenges that causes decline in the funding process. That because Nicolette has done a cup and the cup seems to be doing quite well, I'm also in the market for cups, right? Which then says, why then would a Nicolette customer leave and come to my cups? What is unique about my cup, right? And half the time, our clients are not able to really succinctly walk us through that journey, right? What is the problem that my cup is solving, that Nicolette is solving, you know? And why am I best placed, right, to solve that problem? And why will that customer come here? So that value proposition is key, because if that value proposition is clear and strong, that also aid in your funding raising journey, right? That is easier than to say this is the value proposition. If the funder buys into that on the back of the quality of your customers, it's easy for me to put money into it.
When should an entrepreneur start looking for funding? And why? Why would you, as an entrepreneur, look for funding? And when do you start?
So that's a really, really good question, Nicolette. And I say so because the number of times I've had SMEs saying, I need funding for an opportunity that I need to execute next week.
Tomorrow, the PO has come in,
Right?
Thabo. PO is in.
And that's really the problem. I
Yes.
often say, and I'm hoping this is one of the key takeaway from this discussion, right? That you are working on an opportunity that you think will materialize in 3 months. Start engaging the funders today. Right?
Thabo, but you must remember, when we're looking for opportunities, we are spraying and praying sometimes.
Yeah,
yes.
Right? But
yes.
then you know that one might materialize.
Yeah.
Right? So start the conversation, because in that conversation is saying, what are the documentation that Masisizane require, right, to move that funding much quicker,
Okay.
So one of the criticism of the ecosystem is that we take longer to approve, longer to disperse. Part of it is us, but a part of it is that lack of preparation. That and this is one of the findings in that FinFind study,
yes.
right? That the lack of complete documentation and packaging, and that's also delays the funding process. But if you start the conversation today, right, sit with me and say, what do you require for me to get funding from Masisizane?
Yes.
What documentation do you need? Then you start working in your data room and packaging that. If that opportunity suddenly pops, then you're able to say, Tawang, we've had this conversation, here are all the documentation that you have wanted, can we then? That funding process is going to be much, much shorter than you coming today and say, hey, I need funding for this PO zone.
So it's not necessarily about my idea yet.
Yeah.
It's about saying, look, I am working on some ideas and I believe in my ideas.
Exactly.
So the portion of selling my idea is on me.
Exactly.
But the portion of documentation and preparedness to come to you guys, that's what I can start engaging
That's
with.
what you can start engaging
Okay.
Because part of the funding process is really two parts, right? One is the timing of when you go for funding, which then half the time you come late into the conversation. The second part is the preparedness, right? And quite often, SMEs, they take a really great opportunity and go and knock in a number of wrong doors because now they are pressed for time. But whereas if I know I'm working on environmentally friendly CAP, right? I'm only going to focus on funders that responds to this mandate, right? Which then says there are 3 of these funders, let me engage all 3 of them. What are your requirements? What are your requirements? This is the opportunity that I'm working on. If that opportunity suddenly pops, all of these funders, they know the opportunity, they know the material that they require, that will move much quicker. Instead of saying, I'm not engaging anyone until this is successful, all of a sudden you are knocking on 15 doors. How long is that going to take your funding process?
That's such an important point, that knocking on different doors, because I think we don't know which door is for me and at what stage of my business do I start knocking on this door, right? So maybe take us through that. Take us through, you've got Meana from Bushbuck Ridge. She is a baker. She's got a passion for baking, loves baking, and she decides, you know what, actually, maybe I can build a business around this.
Yeah.
Then you've got a Tiamo solar panels, and Tiamo is seeing this new opportunity within solar panels. So Tiamo starts selling solar panels, but he's bringing them from China. He wants to, create a better value chain around that. Who do these 2 people knock at?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. So let's start with Tiamo, right? Tiamo is saying this is, and it sounds like Tiamo is a Masisizane client, that I've been doing this for 12 months.
Yes.
This is my consistent revenue growth. These are my cash flows, end, right? Because the other question to that is, Tiamo, are you looking for debt funding or are you looking for equity partner?
Okay.
Right? And why is that important? Because if Tiamo is saying, I just need someone that is going to fund my solar panels come from China.
Yeah.
Come here.
And I give at the advice.
Exactly.
Yes.
Then sounds like Tiamo debt funding is yours, right?
Yes.
Here's a working capital support that you require. We work with you. Masisizane will typically fund you over a 36-month period for working capital. We support you. You get your solar panel installed and you service us, right? Versus someone then that says, I need an equity partner in this business, right? Which then says, what more than funding is this person bringing? Because I often say between debt and equity, the rule of thumb for me, always go for debt, unless the equity partner then can demonstrate what they are bringing more than funding.
So maybe they've got a network. Maybe they've got financial management skills.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right? Am I helping you with your strategy?
Yes.
Am I providing you access to my network?
Yes.
Because let's think about it. My business is valued 50 million today.
Yes.
I need 10 million. You come in, here's 10 million, and then you walk away. And you do nothing for the next 5 years. After 5 years of playing golf and you realize, I want to exit this business. Come back to you, Nicolette, please buy me out. Suddenly the business that was 50 million, which I own 20% of, which was 10 million, now that business is 100 million. We're still with the 20%. I've done nothing to aid the growth in your business. I've given you money, you've worked hard.
Now you're getting a return.
Now I've got a 20 million that I'm walking away with, right? So before you say, here's an equity check, thank you for your money. What more are you bringing?
So if I can see that my idea is good, I need to go for debt financing. If I feel, of course, that I have the necessary core skills to be able to run this, if I come to Masisizane, I'm going to get the support anyway.
Exactly.
Then it's much more better positioned for me to get.
So think about it. If you're making these amazing chairs,
Yes.
right? The market is growing. Now I need some equipment to produce many of these. You come to me, okay, give me 5 million to get this equipment.
Yes.
I give you 5 million and you need to service that equipment over 5 years. Right?
Yes.
End of the 5th year, you've paid the capital, you've paid the interest. What happens? Thank you, goodbye.
And we cut ties.
Resharp, we cut ties. Whereas the guy that has injected equity for the same equipment is here. End of
How
the
are we
year,
doing? What are the numbers looking like?
When is the next dividend, right? Okay, what have you done? Have you given me more customers, access to more customers? Next, right?
Yeah.
You do all the work 5 years later. I think this will not working. Let's part this. Okay, here's your 20%, which is now 5 times more.
Okay. And then Me'ana yena, which door does Me'ana knock at?
So again, Me'ana says, does Me'ana have the necessary friends and family to support? Because I think we should not discount that, right? That Me'ana could have a good family and friends that have done well, that believes in Me'ana's business, that are able to support Me'ana, because they are still proving Me'ana's concept, right? So it's the friends, family, and the other F's that is often...
The fools.
The fools, right? That is often spoken about, right?
Yes.
So if that is not the case, is there then grant funding that looks to support businesses like Me'ana in the rural or early stage, that then helps those businesses then to grow?
Yes,
right?
yes.
But I often say that as much as grant funding has no financial obligation, it quite often has massive onerous reporting obligations, right? So it's very important to balance the two. I'm getting the money, but I have the capacity and the capability to meet all of these reporting requirements.
To be held accountable for that money. Yes.
Because quite often people breach the obligations and all the undertakings, covenants on grant funding.
Yes.
Because over time then they realize I'm reporting too much, man.
Yeah.
And I can't then focus on the business. Almost every spoon I sell, I need to report on.
Okay, so let's quickly go back to Tiamo.
Yeah.
Why would Tiamo knock on Masisizane's fund's door instead of a bank? I mean, he could literally just go to the bank, get a debt from the bank, depending on whatever business loan or whatever shape it is. Why would he not go to the bank, which might be quicker, far more quicker, in fact, to get? Yes.
Yeah. And that is, again, not the ticket we are running with, right? We're saying we're probably take longer than the bank, but over and above the funding will provide the support that Tsiamo require. But we also say if Tsiamo is a youth, women in the rural areas,
Preferential.
will price you better than what the other bank friends will price you at and not provide the support after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, right, now we've got the doors. Is there types of funding for what? Like, do I need to come there knowing what I'm going to do with the money? Because sometimes as entrepreneurs, I mean, if the call says apply for 5 million funding, Rakenza, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're putting in that application in, but do you need to, for instance, know whether you want to acquire an asset or you want to acquire working equipment, where you're looking for working capital? What does it look like?
I think ideally,
Yeah.
you want to know, which is also the reason for this lack of funding readiness,
Yes.
right? It's because I cannot account clearly for my use of funds. What am I going to use this funding for, right? Because we've seen instances where funders put money and then there's just holidays galore, right?
And German cars.
And German cars.
Yes.
I'm not going to touch on that now. Right?
Yes.
But then what is then important is then saying, because we also alive to the fact that our client base maybe might not know to that degree, but have an understanding of what problem is this money that I'm looking for is going to solve, right? Is it a question that I've got a debtors book that is taking long to pay, so I've got some cash flow challenge, that's why I need the working capital support whilst I'm looking to collect from my debtors, or is it a question that this business is growing, but I cannot continue to do what I'm doing manually. I need now an equipment. So be able to sit across the funder and explain what you're looking at. And that's where then our service provider panel then comes in, because we can plug you with one, right? That help then this client package this story better, right? That then makes it saleable to our investment committees.
Wow. I think that's important. I think, and honestly speaking, I think whenever you see a funding call, we just get so excited sometimes as entrepreneurs that we just want to be in,
That's true.
Yeah, we just want to be in spaces where money will be available.
But also, sorry to cut you, and that's also the problem why you see a lot of entrepreneurs ESD program hopping, right? Because there's a call for money. Right? Whereas if you sit back and say, do I really need money in this instance? Or I've gotten enough support from a funding point of view, I need something more.
Yes.
Is that program giving me access to the markets that I need now to get to the next stage?
Yes.
I don't think we do enough of that.
But it's an honest conversation you have to have with yourself, and I think that's probably sometimes where the difficulty is.
Yeah.
I would actually put it on two things. I would put it on honesty with self to say, my business does not need funding right now.
Exactly.
And I must allow for certain things to pass me because A is not for me.
Exactly.
But I think the other thing is scarcity.
Yeah.
It's the fear that if I let this one pass, and then when I need money and I have to be the one who goes out to the market looking for money, I may potentially not be able to get it.
But that speaks to our earlier conversation about lack of preparedness.
Yes.
Because if you're having those conversations with multiple funders, it's okay for this one to miss me.
Yes, because the next one, it's just a...
Exactly.
And let's talk about that, because I think it speaks to that investor readiness, right?
Mm.
What does investor readiness, when you get, and it's a new thing that is just, it feels like a buzzword, funders are always telling us investor readiness, South African entrepreneurs are not investor ready. What does that mean?
I always say investor readiness for me is a function of two things.
Okay.
Right? One is your ability to demonstrate the need for funding.
Okay,
right?
okay,
So if we're saying to my earlier point around making chairs, that this business has grown, now I cannot do it manually, I need equipment, and. So we've demonstrated that now I need funding, right? Because they've got a massive customer base that I can't respond to unless I get this equipment.
Hold on, can I quickly insert something?
Yeah.
Would my ability to demonstrate that I need more staff be something that you guys would consider? If I say this business needs capacity, we are getting the contracts, but we're not delivering on time, is that something that you would also but can include next to what the example you've given us?
Exactly.
Okay,
right?
okay,
Because then
yes.
there's the asset finance and then the working capital support that you require.
Okay,
right?
yes,
Then the other part is the capacity to absorb funding.
yes.
Can this business be lent money to, right?
Absorb. We be like in a nice way to absorb money.
Right.
Can you be given money? Is it now a trust issue or is it a demonstration?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is where then you say, one, can this business, we say compliance, for example.
Okay.
Is this business compliant with all the requirements that whether CIPC, SARS,
Yes.
labor, and
then industry specific.
industry specific.
Okay,
And
yes.
that's where we quite fail, right? And then to your earlier point around personal finance management.
Yes.
How is this person managing their finance? So is the business. Because remember, my assessment of your personal finance is what demonstrates your ability to manage your business finance to me, right?
Yes.
Because I don't know you but what I know is I would like you to manage my funds the way you are managing your funds.
Okay, but let's quickly hone in on that. What are you looking at? Are you looking at my credit score? Are you looking at my household budget? Are you looking at my investment portfolio? Are you looking at my savings rate, my debt to income ratio? What are we looking at when we talk about my personal finances?
So we're looking at your credit score.
Okay.
But we're also looking just as how you manage your finances, right? Some of the activities that we see on the business bank account, right?
Oh.
We see some very weekend activities that should not be there.
Quarter past midnight, money's being transferred.
Why are we having such transfer,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Why are we seeing school fees in your, why are we seeing this December holiday in your, because then raises concerns, right? But also the other part is then saying commercial viability.
Okay.
Can you demonstrate how this business makes money?
Yes.
Because then it says, I know who my customer is, where my customer is, how I can reach and service that customer, and why I'm best placed to respond to that customer, right? And half the time you have challenge with business owners responding to that, and that's part of that funding readiness challenge. But the other part is also then saying, which is the issue of security, half the time, which is often spoken about, right? And we appreciate that in the segment of our market, probably youth will not have the security that is required to know sometimes women and people in the rural areas. But we forget that the quality of your market also serves as security, right?
Yes.
What do I mean by that? If I'm funding you on the back of just one client, if that client catches a cold, the entire business case is gone, right? Which then doesn't matter what security I've put forward. But if I'm saying I'm funding you on the back of 5 clients that each contribute 20% into your business case, even if corporate A catches a cold, that business case still stands because at least 80% of your market is still there. That is security.
Can I replace the market with insurance? I mean, there must be some level of business assurance that I can put in place to be able to
and it's critical that you need to have that.
Yes,
so in all the businesses that we fund, we do require that business insurance be in place.
In place, okay.
Right? And I think we saw what happened during COVID, right? You also require business interruption, that in case the interruptions in your business, is this business able then to continue operating and the like. So those are all the issues that I think we look at. And I think it's important for entrepreneurs at an early stage to have that conversation, right? What do you require of me to be funding ready? I'm really, really happy of that conversation than the conversation that says, I need funding tomorrow, because I can probably not help you much with that.
In the interest of time, Thabo, let's talk a little bit about what your advice is, and we'll separate the two. What's your advice first for the entrepreneur who's almost merged with their business? So it's somebody who is paying school fees from the business account because they're saying, I'm a one-man show, so everything, why must I? And often, it's such a funny conversation because often they say, why must I pay tax twice? And I'm like, no, but that's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
What would be your simplest advice to that person that they can implement tomorrow? What is the one thing that they can do to separate those costs, those two entities?
So think about it this way. I've got my ID that starts with 65, wada, wada, wada. Oh, yeah, bona. The business also has this ID that starts with a reg number.
Yes,
Right? So
yes.
keep those two in mind. So as you start today, this registration number needs to have its own business account. And this needs to have its own personal account. End of the month, when you're paying your employees, pay yourself. Right? And all the other activities that happens over the weekend happens here in your personal account, and no one is going to bother you. Secondly, understand what are the compliance that are required and the certification required in that industry you're operating in. Make sure that you get that sorted. The other part is financial management. I've said some of my great friends are good engineers, but poor financial managers, right? So get support where required. So whether it's transaction advisors and accountants, to make sure that the hygiene stuff is done. It often baffles me that when you start having the fundraising conversation, some of the things that should be there, management account, financials, and all of that, is not there. And entrepreneurs start working with an accountant to put together 5 years numbers, which then says, these are hygiene stuff.
Yeah, someone's cooking the numbers. Cooking
Exactly,
the books
right?
now.
So let's get that sorted. So those are some of the, for me, the quick wins that I'll
You
say
just
we need
merged
to
my
sort
question into the other question. Now I was saying let's first concentrate on the personal finances, but
Yeah.
you've gone to the business,
Yeah.
and you touch on something that is quite key, which is record keeping.
Yeah.
So let me give you a little joke that I find very awkward in South Africa. SAR says that when you're a vet vendor, you're a collection agency. Mara, they don't pay for you to hire the people to help you with the collection, right? So often that becomes a bone of contention for entrepreneurs. And I'm not specifically speaking about, for instance, VAT.
Yeah.
I'm specifically speaking about just record keeping.
Yeah.
They feel, one, they don't have the expertise on their own, but they have to pay someone. Then it becomes a budget line that sometimes they cannot afford, right? So you're saying even before you ideate this big thing that you want and start putting out feelers, get engaged with the funds to get an understanding of what is their requirements. But those requirements cost money, Thabo.
Not all of them.
Business plan, business plan, because serious, like English that you guys like.
But that's the problem, that you put together a 50-page business plan that you cannot walk me through.
Because I didn't write it. I had a specialist write it.
Exactly, right? Whereas if you sit with me, a 10-page business plan, because really what I want to know out of your business plan, what does your business do? How does it do it? What problem you're solving? How big is the problem? Why are you best placed to solve that problem, right? And how you're going to make money and pay me. That's really what I'm looking at. And then all of that then is translated into projections and an end. Right? But if you've paid someone to do it, you're not going to be able to walk me through what I've just walked you through. And that's where the problem is. Because it's not the English that I'm looking for. It's you walking me through the story, how this biz makes money, and where is the paying customer, and why will this customer keep on coming?
But perhaps maybe it's intimidating. So think about it. You just said projections. What's that? For an ordinary entrepreneur, and even if and I guess sometimes we say, I think there's sometimes often a level of expectation from somebody who's making a revenue of $1 million to kind of know certain things, but in reality we've seen that they don't, you know. So the words projections, the words financial statements, the words management accounts, you know, those things are often a little bit intimidating for the ordinary person who's found a business that works for them. They know how to make the money. You know, and they've got to bring somebody in. So let's assume I'm a business. I am Tiamo solar panels, and I don't have that yet. But I really ideally want to come to Masisizane to get funding at some point, because I can see. Can I come before the funding? Can I come and say, I'm not here to ask for funding. I'm here to ask for the business support. What does that then look like? Because you guys then have to allocate a certain portion of value to me to be able to get those services.
Yeah. So we don't fund businesses, provide the business support to businesses that are not in our portfolio yet.
Okay.
Right? And that's why collaboration in the ecosystem is critical.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Because you cannot be the solve to everyone.
Absolutely.
And there are partners then that addresses precisely that problem, right? So engage those partners together with Masisizane.
Okay.
But guys, I'm engaging this partner. It's helping me finalize my plan.
Yes.
What are some of the things you want this partner to address in my business plan? So that as they address that plan, it's also specific to the number of funders that you are engaging with.
Yes.
You know, so that then shortens that period and the turnaround.
A quick win, a quick story, a quick great story about Masisizane that you can give me.
So to date, we've disbursed just over $1 billion.
Sure.
Right? We've supported businesses, just over 500 number of businesses, created over 13,000 jobs. Right?
Wow.
Which is, we still say there's a lot more that we like to do going forward, particularly to address the issues of transformation and economic growth in these underserved markets.
Yo, that is incredible. That is incredible. Is there an SME or an entrepreneur that you can kind of just highlight for us and what they do and what was their story?
Yeah, my team.
You don't have to tell us how much, man.
No.
Because target, but you can even tell us industry. What was the business about? Yeah.
So we funded a number of businesses in the retail service station space.
Okay.
Right? Really partnering.
Wait, retail service stations.
Yeah. So
Kid garage.
So Kid Garage.
Before court.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right? So we funded a number of those. One, Nicholas started with one with us, and they've grown to have 2 or 3, right? And that's what one of the stories. We funded a number of, I suppose, quick service restaurant,
Yes.
the Wimpy's, the Muchachos, and Rocco Mamas, and the like. And we like to see when our clients grow and start putting together a portfolio of these quick service restaurants.
Yes.
Right? Because then it says you are growing both in building a portfolio, but you're growing in just business acumen and managing your businesses.
I know we're running out of time, but you just piqued my interest.
Yeah.
What type of funding does it look like for a franchise? Because a franchise is not really my idea.
Yeah.
I've just identified a market where it could potentially work. Yeah. But where does the risk lie? Does it lie with me as the entrepreneur or the franchisor? Is it a franchisor?
Yeah.
The big guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we often have MOUs and engagement with the franchisors, right? Because a franchisor says, there's a business, these are the process that we've been put in place, this is a training that we take you through, and we need you to put forward 50% unencumbered cash and 50% debt, right? So I've got the 50% from my savings, then I come to Masisizane. Masisizane help me with the other 50%. That is typically what we see and what we fund, right? And we'll find you that, but over and above then we work with you, how do we support you? Because typically it will be my mother who was a teacher, now left with some few savings, then I want to start a garage, right? So how do we then support you in that process? So a bigger part of our portfolio is also franchise fund funding.
Fantastic. Yeah. And how agile is Masisizane in terms of the new ways of working? AI, gig economy. People are going into businesses that they never thought they would go into. Yeah. Tech is a big player in the market. I feel like AI still needs to land in Africa because it hasn't really landed, right? How agile is it? What can we look forward to from the Masisizane team?
Yeah. Which I suppose also speak to how long does it take for Masisizane to approve? Because I feel like you're asking me that question without asking me. Right? which again, it's partly your readiness to start the funding process.
Yes.
Right? I'll come to your earlier question, but I wanted to learn this, that you cannot believe the number of times a high will land in my inbox, right? Or a 30% required documentation that land in my inbox. And
that's so disappointing, though.
And you go away for 6 months and then come back and say, yo, remember I applied 6 months ago.
And you ignored me, or you didn't respond, yes.
Right? And by that time, you're not talking to me, you're on X, right? forgetting that all you did was give me high or 20% of the requirements, which I think is really critical for SMEs to have that early conversation. What do you require, and provide that documentation, because that helps move the process much, much quicker. To your first question, one of the things that we are looking at is how do we then adopt some alternative scoring methods in our assessments.
Yes.
Right? So that then says not just your credit score, how do you assess from your bank statement, because then you've got consistent deposit that can be verified. Right? Can we look at that and in assessing your application? So those are some of the things that we are looking at as we look into the Masisizane of the future.
Sure. I mean, it's absolutely big portfolio, absolutely big call, a social call that is absolutely important. It's been an absolutely fantastic conversation. And I really think we need a part 2, so we're going to try and organize that, because there's still so much more that I think we can pull from you and learn from you. So quickly, before we close, straight to camera, what is your number one financial lesson you teach your children?
Lesson I teach my children. Damn. I think one important part is save and invest, as they often say, is not your timing the market, it's your time in the market. So I try to instill that as early as possible. And this other question of compound interest, which we'll touch on part two.
So you've committed?
Committed.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. It is, of course, Thabo Hleza, who heads up investment at Old Mutual's Masisizane Fund, who's really just given us a sense of what is the SME landscape in South Africa and how does this impact fund, this big, big giant, come in to solve some of those pain points that SMEs and entrepreneurs have in the South African landscape. Thank you very much for tuning in. And remember, nothing that we say here constitutes as financial advice. If you are, however, looking for financial advice, please speak to somebody who is certified and registered to give you financial advice. Bye.